Hello, everybody. My name is Jordan Upright. And in classrooms, there is a political bias. As you can see, I decided to research into this question of whether there is a political bias or not in the classrooms. I will be going through my different sources I have found to explain why I believe this and what solutions could be put to help resolve this issue. First, I felt that I needed to look into the basic information of political leanings of educators. A survey done by the Education Week Research Center gathered information of K-12 educators, including 555 teachers, 266 school leaders, 202 district leaders, and 99 other school or district employees. Out of 899 answers, 41% affiliated with Democrat, 30% with independent, and 27% Republican, and 1% third party. Not only did I gather research from K through 12, but I found information about college educators. Studies done by the World Net Daily and Policy Review magazine looked into the Democrat to Republican ratio in various colleges. As you can see, at Brown University it is 53-3. At Berkeley, 59-7. At Stanford, 151-17. In the University of Colorado at Boulder, 184 out of the 190 social science and humanities professors identify as Democrats. At UCLA, 53 out of the 56 history professors are affiliated with leftist parties, and 16 out of the 17 political science professors are affiliated with leftist parties. Another research that I have found was done by the Center of Popular Culture, not on educators, but on the schools who pick graduation speakers. They examined over a 10-year period and discovered that out of 32 colleges examined, including all Ivy League schools, 226 to 15 speakers were liberal. Out of the 32 schools, 22 of them didn't even invite any conservative speakers. From the research compiled here, it shows that a majority of educators in K through 12 and universities are more liberal to conservative. This doesn't mean that there is a definite bias in the classroom, but it's a starting point to see where a majority of educators lie. However, I did find that the graduation research here about the speakers possibly showing a bias. A reason why I can see is that a school would pick someone they would identify with. So if their ideology is more liberal, they would choose someone with the same ideology. Next, I decided to look into how students felt about a political bias. A study was done by Darren L. Linville, where a survey was addressed to 277 females and 251 males. They were asked questions on a scale of 1, meaning not at all, to 4, meaning a great deal. A few examples of the questions are, I believe I should censor my own political beliefs to preserve my grade when my political beliefs are different than my professors, with a mean of 3.19. Professors are dismissive of students' political beliefs with a mean of 3. And in my experience, professors tend to limit class discussion to the professor's own beliefs with a mean of 3.19. And I'm not going to stray away from the questions that came out with a beneficial answer. Some of those are, I would feel comfortable informing my professors of my disagreement with their political beliefs with a mean of 3.56. I feel free to express my political beliefs during class discussions, irrespective of my professor's political beliefs, with a mean of 3.95. And I feel free to express my political beliefs on assignments, irrespective of political beliefs, with a mean of 4.03. These questions and their means show that students do feel comfortable expressing their political beliefs, but that is not the problem. These results show that they believe that they should censor themselves to preserve their grades and to not start conflict. The survey results also state that students' differing opinions are being dismissed by professors, that the professors only limit discussion to their similar beliefs rather than the opposing beliefs. Students' comfortability doesn't matter if they're just going to be shut down. Censoring opposing beliefs is a restriction of the First Amendment right. I then decided to look into specific examples and to see political bias. Several Cornell professors canceled class to their, quote, personal distress and concern for students' emotional well-being, end quote. At Iowa State, a professor canceled her class and postponed a quiz. The reason why, that was the day after Donald Trump was announced president. Do teachers have the right to cancel classes, the classes that students and their guardians pay for because they are upset? Well, the answer is yes, a teacher can cancel those classes, but it doesn't mean that it's ethically right. Let's look more into censoring. How about a whole university rejecting someone from visiting? That would happen to political commentator Ben Shapiro. From multiple articles, Shapiro can be seen trying to be rejected from various campuses. Grand Canyon University declined a venue and wrote a statement saying because his appearance would be too divisive and run counter to the school's mission. Gonzaga University would also reject Shapiro due to routinely draw protests that include extremely divisive and hateful speech and behavior, which is offensive to many people, regardless of their age, politic, or beliefs. DePaul and California State University would also try to block Shapiro. Shapiro isn't the only one that is treated differently. Other well-known speakers like Jordan Peterson, Milo, and the organization Turning Point USA will also be blocked. Just because they and their students don't like what he has to say, does that mean he should be blocked, that he should be rejected? No, no matter what they say, our First Amendment protects his rights to say what he has to say. The last sources were two opinion articles, one written by David Cutler and Frederick Hess. Teachers. Cutler believed in instead of venting, we should discuss why the other side feels that way, and to admit our biases openly, to look at both perspectives while being open about our own beliefs. Hess believed instead of complaining, teachers should use events for teaching opportunities. Both teachers decided not to try to vent or complain, but to learn, to teach what controversial event happened and to let their students learn about something new. However, Cutler, on the left, would have agreed with more of an open bias. Hess, on the right, would rather stick to just teaching aspect and keep a more neutral interpretation. Now for the solutions. There is no solution to get rid of bias. It's in our blood, but that with what Hess and Cutler said, I believe that we should use moments, no matter how much we agree with them or disagree with them, to teach. We should tell students both sides of the stories. We should be open to those who disagree with us, not privilege those who agree, and let those who disagree be censored. We must not censor the opposing ideas of others just because we do not agree with it or that it is, quote, offended us. Teachers are there to help students learn all about the world, both sides of every story, and let them decide what to think. Instead of protests, how about we listen? Civil discussion. Sit at a table and have a conversation without arguing and listening with what the other has to say. Have a civil debate and discuss issues from two sides in a common civil way while listening to each other. Because at the end of the day, no matter what beliefs we have, we are all the same. We are all people. Thank you. Do any of you have questions?
So I heard you saying that because of Ben Shapiro's First Amendment rights that he should be allowed to speak at colleges and not be censored. I just have a question. The First Amendment does allow Ben Shapiro to say what he likes, but it does not protect him from the consequences of what he says. So perhaps him not being allowed to speak at a school is just a consequence of him participating in his First Amendment rights. What would you have to say about that?
Well, Well, I believe anybody should have the right to speak, especially if students of organizations, usually with Ben Shapiro, he's usually part of Turning Point USA, which organizations at colleges invite him to come. If there are students that want him to speak, they should be able to listen. And Ben Shapiro should be able to speak. No matter if you disagree with him, if you disagree, you can go and talk to him. ask him why you disagree, and he'll talk back to you. And if you don't like what he has to say and don't want to see him, you don't have to go and see him. It's an optional event. And that's the thing. Like, banning people, I mean, that's a certain thing that you can censor someone, but if it's optional, you have the choice not to go and see him. So I believe, might as well give him the right to speak, and if you don't like what he has to say, you don't have to go, you know?
Since the university is kind of a large representative of student bodies, and Ben Shapiro has said things that would make members of that student body feel like they are invalidated or they are, let's just say, wrong. Do you think that might really affect the relationship between students and their administrators? And would that somehow make them feel as though the administrators condone things that Ben Shapiro is saying and then therefore affect the integrity and the safety of the students at the university?
Well, I have this idea. So with administrators for like Shapiro or the students that bring in Shapiro, they're not accountable for his actions. Those are his actions. They do not take responsibility for that. So if Ben Shapiro comes and says something that people don't like, people shouldn't blame the administrator because it's not their fault. If that's Ben's for his right to speak.
They did give him a platform, though. They allowed him to do that.
You're all right. But I believe we should give platforms. Even if it is controversial, we should give platforms because you said like a majority of the student body may not like what I have to say. But what about the majority of the student body? They're not being represented.
It just depends on where the university is. Thank you for answering my question.
No problem. Thank you for asking. Any other questions? Yes.
So, like, when you were saying that there shouldn't be protests, do you not think protests are an effective method of demonstration? Or
Oh, no. I believe you have the right to protest. That is in your First Amendment. You do have the right to protest. But I believe that sometimes with these protests that do happen, we can make them more civil. We can talk about it instead of protesting. Because I've seen, you can probably see videos on YouTube of people yelling and screaming at each other that don't get anywhere. And that's a huge problem because why do we need to keep arguing at each other when we can just talk to each other? You know? I mean, if you want to protest, you have the right to protest. Go ahead. But I believe that talking is more valuable.
so, like, in that case, speaking again on the university speakers, suppose that a protest does devolve, because no matter how much you want to say that civil discourse is away, when people's lives are being affected, they get a lot more impassioned by things.
Yes.
So, like, I just feel like it comes down to a matter of like safety and respect. Like, for example, with Tamika Mallory, when she came here, the administration asked her to attend events with Jewish people before her talk and like address that controversy because there were protesters and stuff. So, like, I mean, are you saying that they should do stuff like that, or they should just completely allow them to talk?
Who, like the protesters?
No, like the people who are controversial speakers, should they just, do you think there should be guidelines for their actions if they do come, or do you think they should just like do whatever they want?
Well, I think guidelines is more of like the law. They need to follow the law. I mean, they can't go, you know, robbing people while they're coming to speak or anything like that. But like, as long as they're coming and doing what they are here to do, then I believe it's fine to say whatever they want to say. If you want to protest them, go ahead and protest them. But there are things that we can make it civil, and then there's things that just get out of hand. Yep.
So, I just want to be clear. The way that you're talking about protests, it makes it sound like you believe that people go and protest and they haven't spoken to the people they're protesting already. What I've seen from going to protests is that we protest because we've already spoken and civil conversation has failed. That's why there's a need for demonstration, and that's why it's secured in our First Amendment rights. Because sometimes the freedom to speak out doesn't get anything done, so we need to demonstrate. So are you saying that that you think protesters aren't speaking first? They just go to protest for the sake of chaos?
No, I did not say that. But what I said earlier is you have the right, and you also said it in your First Amendment, you have the right to protest. I believe that if you want to use that right, you have the ability to use that right. Just personally, in my opinion, I believe that more of a talking one-on-one type of deal, or just talking in a civil discourse manner, is more beneficial, but that's just my personal opinion. Yes.
So, would you say that it's very surprising that most of the teachers or professors that were shown in those studies were Democrats or left-leaning, since those on the right are, for lack of a better term, wanting education to be reduced in some way with not giving as much funding to schools and organizations, and those on the left went pretty much the opposite, went somewhat the opposite of that, for education to be put to a higher standard. So considering the sort of ideology within education, do you think it's not at all surprising that there are the majority of teachers and professors being left-leaning?
I mean, I believe that, like, it doesn't matter what education you have, or like, not education, political beliefs you have, sorry about that. You can become an educator if you want to, but I just believe that more people with a left-leaning ideology do more likely become educators. I don't believe that's mostly based on their political beliefs of whether they want to, like, have more education or less education. I just believe it's whether they want to become an educator or not. Anybody else?